Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris, and in today's video, if you like florals, transfers, paint inlays, DIY paint, then you came to the right place because that's what is in today's video, and I'm just going to call it rustic florals. So let's begin. I picked up this jewelry box off of a Whatnot show from South Fred Vintage. You can also find her here on YouTube, and I will list her in my description box if you would like to check her out. But I did go ahead and clean this piece very, very well. Now I'm going to just remove the hardware. Make sure to clean up under where that hardware was. Get all that dirt, grime, and grease up. And then somebody had turned this into a hanger at some point, so I am going to remove the hanger. Once I've got all that cleaned up and removed, I've still got some cleaning to do. So this is like cloth inside here, and it's, you know, it's got some dirt and fuzzies and all that. I mean, it's not in terrible shape. It's not stained. It's just from sitting, you know, for quite a while. So it's got all that gunk in there. It's such small quarters, and I really did not want to take it apart. So my idea was to use some brushes. I grabbed some coarser brushes, paint brushes, and just got in there and just kind of brushed out all of that gunk and just use an assortment of brushes. And I also use that little Dollar Tree pick to get up under there as well. And then I'm going to clean it and scrub it. And it did come out pretty clean. So next, I got these soft sanders. I picked these up off of Amazon. I've had them sitting aside, and I decided, you know what, these pieces will be perfect to use it for. And let me tell you what, if you don't have any of these, get some. They sand very nicely, very nicely. And again, linked in the description box. But I'm going to make sure I just get in here and sand all of this up, getting any rough spots or anything in better condition. Now I decided I wanted to address the holes on the back, so I'm going to use some wood filler, and I just picked this up from Lowe's. I really like this stuff because it's stainable, but just use it like you would a spackle, let it dry, sand it down, and you're good to go. Now I'm going to grab some gel stain, and I just picked this up, I believe from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to put it in a little bowl. I'm going to add some water because I want to get it a little more liquidy so I can use it as a stain. Because I want to, you can see how this box has some of those little scuff marks on it. I just want to stain the back side, make it look nice and pretty. And just using a cloth for that back side, I'm just going to rub all of that gel stain into that wood, and you can just see here how much better that looks. Those scratches and stuff, scuff marks are just all concealed, and it looks, in my opinion, very well. Now I am going to grab my clear liquid patina, and of course you can probably get away with using any kind of protectant, maybe some Minwax, polyacrylic, but what I am trying to do is just prevent the staining. This seemed to work pretty well on that sewing drawer that I had made over, and so I'm going to apply just a really good layer all over this drawer. Once that's dried down, I'm going to grab the color Crinoline from DIY Paint. This is a clay-based paint. I'm really becoming quite a fan of this color. It's just a very beautiful, creamy, neutral color. And I'm going to start with a smaller paintbrush so I can try to get down into the smaller areas. I know somebody's probably saying, well, why don't you just tape it off? Well, you know, I'm trying to get these projects done so I can get this video made for you guys. And sometimes I cut some corners, and hey, if anything, I'm working on my fine motor skills. And once I got all the little smaller areas done, I'll grab me a thicker brush and just go ahead and start painting along the sides. I am not going to paint the underside. After I applied a couple of coats, I wanted to go ahead and sand it down. Now, I'm not talking about sanding it completely down. I thought this would be a good time to go ahead and get some distressing going on. If you don't like this step, skip this step. But again, I want more of a rustic look. I find that a lot of my buyers tend to like the rustic look, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to sand this up, bringing out some of the wood in some spots, okay, just until my eyes are appreciating the piece. When I got over here to the front side and how it kind of sinks down because the sides are more decorative, you're going to see here, I tried to fold this sponge in a certain way to get it down in there, and I was like, you know what, why don't I just cut this? So I cut just a little square of this sanding sponge out just so it'll fit nicely in there. So I'm telling you, these sanding sponges are not only great to use, but they are very practical and make life just a little bit easier. And once I smooth out some of those rough spots in the paint, I'm going to grab a baby wipe and I will start distressing like around the edges. I just find that this works very well. And especially now that I've got some of the thicker spots sanded down, this was very easy. And I just did that throughout. And to clean up any paint that got around the edges around the back side, I just use that same baby wipe. And because this is clay-based paint, it cleans up very, very nicely. Okay, so I've got these transfers. I picked these up off of Amazon, I'm pretty sure. I'll have them linked if I can find the link. But these are from Redesigned by Prima, and they are called the Botanical Paradise. So I decided I wanted to use some of the florals out of here because, you know, they're nice and long, and I thought that would be so pretty along the sides. So I'm just going to cut out the pieces that I want to use. Once I figure out where I want them, we're just going to lay those down. Now I'm going to tell you, I believe this might be the first time I ever used this brand of transfers. And I'm going to tell you, their transfers don't seem as sticky as the IODs. So I really had to make sure that I just kind of pressed them down. But anyway, once I got all of those flower transfers on the side, I went to the front, I grabbed some script font out of there and another pretty piece to put on the front. And we're just going to rub that on. Now they do supply you with a little wood stick to rub on with. I'm not a big fan of it. I like the plastic ones. They just seem a little bit easier to use and get the transfer down. So I ended up grabbing my IOD one and just rubbing with that. Once I've got the three sides done, I'm going to grab my clear wax from DIY and just rub that wax all over, sealing in those transfers, sealing in that paint. And I'm telling you, I really love the way this turned out. And you guys are going to see, this is a multi-use piece. You can use it as a drawer to display your jewelry in, maybe sit it on your dresser, or you can add some of those sawtooth hangers back on it and use it as a little trinket tray. And sorry if you hear noise in the background, my dog decided she wanted to eat while I was filming because she does not know how to be quiet while I'm recording. And I did also seal the back in. I thought, you know, I had to do some wiping and stuff here and there because the paint got on it. I'm just going to put that clear wax all around the back side of this wood. That's also going to help recondition it. And it does really make a huge difference. And once you get all that wax on, you want to make sure that you are wiping away the excess wax, because the clumpier that wax is sitting on a piece, the longer it's going to take to dry, and sometimes it just leaves a tacky feeling. Once I get all that wiped down, I will put that handle piece back on, and then this project is done. And you guys will have to let me know, what do you think about project number 1? In project number 2, I got this piece here. It was out of an estate sale. It was in a lot of stuff that I had bought. And I did try to sell this a couple of times, well, a few times on Whatnot. Nobody was interested, so I decided I'm going to make it over. Yes, it's a hand-painted piece. It is signed. Somebody painted it back in 1983, but you know what? I would rather upcycle it than it find its way into the dump. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to start by sanding this piece down and then cleaning it. Once I've got that painted surface nice and smooth, I'm going to grab a primer. You can use any primer. Whatever primer you've got on hand, use that. But I've got the Paint Contour 2-in-1 primer, and I will be applying 2 coats of this onto that painted surface. Now that the primer is dried, I'm going to grab vintage linen, and I will apply a couple of coats. And I will also paint around the edges and inside of that little hole area at the top or side, however you're looking at it. But I'm just going to cover this whole piece, not the back. Now on to do the crackle. Grab your favorite crackle medium. I use Folk Art Crackle Medium. Just around the edges, I'm going to apply a generous coat. I did find out, if you saw the video where I made over the wooden pig, I found that the thicker it is, the better the crackle it is. So, now you don't want it dripping off, but I am applying just a very good coat around the edge. And you can see when I painted around the edge, I was not perfect. I wanted some of that brown that was under there to show through as well. So now we're going to grab a Gypsy green. I have to say this has become my favorite green in the DIY paint line. I absolutely love this color. And I will apply that on top of my crackle medium once that crackle medium is dried down. And when you are working with a crackle medium, at least in this brand, you want to try to avoid doing more than 2 swipes over it, because otherwise it becomes a little bit of a gunky smear and it's not very pretty. So I do dry down my sections as I'm working around the piece. Now, once that has dried down, I'm going to grab just a little scraper. You can use this. You could, use a sander. I just find that this pulls off just a little chunkier sections. So I'm going to use that and scrape away. I wanted just a little bit more of the white coming through. Now, you don't want to dig your scraper into it. Otherwise, you're going to get down to the wood. So you just want to do this step slowly. And I will go back and forth from a coarse piece of sandpaper and this scraper and just get the desired look I want. Then I'm just going to wipe away all of the sanding dust and grab a paint inlay. And this paint inlay is the Lattice Rose Inlay. I'm really loving paint inlays, you guys. They have this greenish color inlay in there, and I thought would look really well with the Gypsy green paint. So my first step is going to be to apply that vintage linen to the surface that we want to apply our paint inlay. Next, we grab our paint inlay. And when I spritz water on the paper, but I also spritz a little on my project. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly when I started that, but it works for me, so that's what I do. And unfortunately, when I laid my paper down, I did not get it down flat, so I'm just kind of trying to work some of those wrinkles out. But in my opinion, it's okay if we still have some wrinkles in there. It's okay, because these are rustic. I then re-spritz over the paper. Make sure that's nice and damp. Press in with a paper towel just to make sure all those inlays are in that paint. And then I'm going to leave it to dry. Now, once it's dried, we are going to remist it on top of that paper. I just kind of press it in. This is going to help with the releasing process of pulling that paper up. And here's the reveal. Isn't that so pretty? I absolutely think that looks amazing. Now, because this paper was not long enough to reach completely across my wood piece, I am going to continue to do the remainder of that I'll apply my vintage linen. I'm sure there are several different ways you can do this. This is just the way I did it on this particular project. And let me tell you, I'm learning there is no one way to get to the finish line. There are several different methods that work for people. So you do you, but this is how I did it, and it worked fantastic. Ta-da! Okay, so after I got that done, there were, some spots because my paper was kind of crinkled in spots, and so it left some raised areas. So I thought I would just go ahead and take my scraper, scrape some of those down just a little bit, kind of smoothing it out. And once I've got that texture on the top looking where I am satisfied, and you can see I'm like, okay, so I got some paint when I was applying the paint to the top around the edges, but I was like, you know what, it's okay. I just want to kind of scrape over it. I don't want it to look too much like fresh paint just kind of got splattered there. So I want it to be very cohesive. Again, I'm going to be selling all of these projects. I am building up to my February 16th Whatnot show. That link is in the description box if you would like to bookmark and save it. All right, next, you've got to seal in the paint inlays. We've got to seal in this paint. Before you go over a paint inlay, you want to make sure it is 100% dry. If you're not sure, wait longer because these things will smear, and they smear very easily. But I made sure this was extra, extra dry, and I'm going to grab clear liquid patina and spray over it. If you're not confident that it's completely dry, use a spray-on sealer. That's normally what I do, but it's just way too cold right now. Now, because of the texture that's on the top from the clay-based paint and the paper inlays, there was just some very pretty texture on there. So I'm going to grab a light brown sugar glaze from Paint Couture and just go over that and then wipe it back. That way this glaze can settle around those textures, just making it look older, more antique. I love this project. I honestly, truly do. This glaze is also going to work as an extra coat of sealer. Now I'm going to set that up there to dry. I've got these hooks, just some old brass looking hooks, but they did not come with any screws. So I had to grab some screws, and the only ones I had were silver, but that's okay. I'm going to use the ebony rub and buff to hold my pieces. I like to put them in some styrofoam, and then I will go over the tops of those screws just with an old paintbrush that I always use with the rub and buff, and just kind of go on top of that. Now, I will say that rub and buff wipes off extremely easy. I don't know if I would have let it sit longer, if it would have been better. So you may want to go ahead and use just a black, maybe all-in-one type of paint. That, in my opinion, would have worked out better, but I was already into it, so I just decided to proceed. I had to put a couple of coats. The second coat I did let sit longer. Just use some black paint. And then once your either paint or rub and buff is completely dried, go over it with a metallic type of paint. I'm using Bronze Luxe Metallic from Paint Couture. And I just want these to match as well to those hooks as possible. Now I'm just going to place my hooks, positioning them where I want them. Get them screwed on. Once I get them screwed on, I have one other embellishment that I want to do to this piece, and that is to add just some chiffon ribbon. And I use this little color green and this cream color, and I tied on some vintage lock and vintage key. I thought that would just give it a beautiful decor look. I did put on some sawtooth hangers on the back side so it can be hung. And here's the reveal to this project. Let me know what you think about project number 2. In project number 3, I've got this, I don't know if it was like a foot off of a table or couch or whatever, but I've got this piece and I've got this square wood plate piece. And the first thing I'm going to do is around the edges of this square plate, it was a little uneven. So I'm just going to keep going around the edges till I can get it as smooth and as proportioned, if you will, as possible. And then I'm just going to sand the entire piece down, making it nice and smooth, getting off any of whatever kind of glaze might be on it. You can see it's a little shiny. So I'm just going to work around that entire piece, sanding it off. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the round wood piece. And then, of course, you want to make sure you clean it up and wipe away all of that sanding dust. So the next thing, I'm going to marry these two pieces together. I'm going to find the center of the back of my plate, and then I'm just going to put a piece of painter's tape down to help prevent that wood from splitting. Then I have a 2-inch long wood screw. And then I'm just going to screw that in from the front side of that plate. And I just went a little too far. I just want a little bit of it coming out. And then I'm going to set that on top of that already existing hole there on that round wood piece and just screw it in. And when you screw it in, you just want to make sure you get that screw as flush with your plate as possible. So I do like to use the countersinking screws. And now we have a tray. Okay, so I'm going to grab the color Crinoline and we're going to paint the leg part, just the bottom part in this color. Part of me is kind of thinking, girl, you should have done this before you attached the two pieces, but it was already said and done and I didn't want to take it back apart because I was afraid something would go wrong. So I'm just working with it. Now for the top section, I want to use the color Apothecary. And I'm just going to go ahead and start on the bottom. That way when I flip it over onto that leg that is already going to be dry, it's just so much easier to work with. Just kind of cutting in around the leg there or the stand piece. And then just give this a couple of coats of that color. Now, when I flipped it around, of course, I went ahead and I got my first coat down on the top side and that screw. I don't know why I didn't think about doing this before I got that on there. The screw, of course, has, a little dip in it, and I didn't want there to be a hole in the top of this piece. So after that first coat dries down, I'm going to go ahead and grab some spackle and with my finger just kind of pat it into that hole, smooth it out, and then I will let it dry. Once it's dry, I will go back in with my sanding sponge and I'm just going to sand this top piece down. Now, I don't want this all caked up, so I do like sanding my coats down. It's best if you do this in between coats. It will come out a lot smoother. The texture, you won't feel all that texture. I hope that makes sense. And when I'm sanding this down, I definitely go around the edges. I want to bring out some of that wood along the edges of the tray part. I am also going to go around the leg and distress it up as well with some sandpaper. And my final coat on the top section, I'm just going to kind of pounce that Apothecary around so I don't have as many streaks going on it. And then I will, once that dries down, I will go back over it with my sanding sponge again, just to kind of make sure it's nice and smooth. Once we get this all painted, I am using clear liquid patina and I'm going to seal this entire piece in with that. Now, I've got the Flora Parisiensis. Don't know how to say it, but this is a IOD transfer. I've just got a few of these florals left. So I'm going to cut out this last floral piece I have. I know I want it to go on top. This transfer is also going to help disguise where that screw is. So that is a plus plus. And I do find kind of folding the piece the transfer piece into where I'm going to position it. Makes it so much easier for me to see on the back side where I'm going to be cutting. And then we're just going to lay that piece down. Again, remember, we have already sealed this. That is going to make putting your transfer on very easily. Just make sure your sealer is dry. Otherwise, that's a whole other problem you can face. But we'll just rub and transfer it on. And then I was feeling like this little spot here on the bottom was just a little too bare. So I'm going to cut out some of the script out of this transfer book. And we're just going to piece that. Again, I'm always saying, cut your transfers and make them work. Having it one line was too long, so I cut it down to make 2 lines, and I love the way this looked. Once I get that on, I will apply some clear wax, and this piece will be done and ready to be displayed. Let me know what you guys think about project number 3. Now I decided to put this in here. I lost footage out of the first part, but that's what the piece looked like before. This was how it looked like after I did my first set of stamps from the Dollar Tree on this piece, and then I decided I wanted to make it over, and I had already repainted the center, covering up those stamps with a white paint. I used one with an all-in-one built-in sealer, and then I applied a transfer out of the traditional Pots transfer book from IOD. Place that on there, and now I'm going to go around all the trim with the color Americauna. This is a cottage color paint. You can pick any of the DIY paints up from my friend Sammy at Unicorn Dust Designs. That's where I get mine from. And I'm just going to go and paint all around this taupey color that I painted it before. And once I get all that painted on the top of the lid there, I do just add a piece of creamy chiffon ribbon, and these projects will be done. You guys will have to let me know which was your favorite project out of all 4. I am thinking I really love the one with the hooks, the little hanging shelf. I think it's gorgeous, but I'm going to let you enjoy this finale, and I hope to see you guys next week. And thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.